All right, I'd like to bring to order the Capital Outlay Committee for November 21st, 2024 at 10:15 a.m. Can we just, starting with you, Mark, go around and introduce ourselves so everybody knows who we are?
Sure. Mark Kelleher, rep from the Finance Committee.
Scott Norm, Finance Committee.
Ann Clark Tucker, Planning Board.
Rich Lowry as Town Administrator.
Martha Donovan, Select Board.
And Paul Doan, serving at the pleasure of the Town Administrator.
Oh, Frank,
Just F.
are you there, Frank? Frank got stuck in Boston, so he's our,
Yes, I'm here, sorry, I was fighting with the mute button.
that's okay. You want to introduce yourself and who's representative?
Frank Wysack, Select Board, thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Joe Powers, Town Administrator. Thank you all for your continued efforts. We're ready to get underway.
Yeah, and I'm going to apologize. I know our meeting was really long last time, so I'm going to try to be quicker, and I think these things can be a little bit easier. And I'm admonishing myself, so it was long. I think we got a lot of good information, though. So why don't we start with golf, because I think you guys are pretty straightforward. Come up and introduce yourselves. Oh, before you do that, can we approve?
You can approve, you can do it later on the agenda, it's whatever the will of the committee is.
All right, well, can we quickly approve the minutes of the November 14th meeting? Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion. Approve the minutes.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have to do a verbal? So Frank, can you say aye or nay?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
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 All right, now we can start with golf, the
Great.
really important stuff.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Roman Greer, the Director of Golf, and I'm joined by Sean Fernandez, our Golf Course Superintendent.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I think, the big difference between your last year's budget and this year's budget is that your irrigation project is back on the plan.
Yes, that's true.
So that's the main difference. Otherwise, you're pretty stable in terms of what you're looking to do.
Absolutely. So we have three projects that we've submitted for. FY26, a bunker, an irrigation system upgrade. FY29, a bunker renovation. And the new one on our plan that we submitted this year is FY30, the replacement of our original maintenance building.
So the replacement of, sorry, because that might be just in a different category for us. Hold on a second.
It's under facilities maintenance.
Oh, it's under facilities maintenance.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. So maybe you can just quickly describe the three projects, and if anybody has any questions up here, we can ask questions.
Sure, most of it comes from the maintenance side, so I'll give you a little history and then we'll move right into why we're doing it and what's going on. Course was built in 73, 74. The original irrigation system lasted until 2005. The irrigation, start with the irrigation. It lasted basically about 32 years for the system, and we replaced it in 05. In 05, we replaced it with Rainbird irrigation system. The only difference was we used what we call HDPE pipe, which is high-density poly pipe, which right now looks like it could last somewhere up to 50, maybe 70 years. So we made a really good purchase at that time. So at this time, we will not be changing pipe. We'll just be doing heads and wire. The system is just about 20 years old. Next year it'll be 20 years old in 2025, which I'm putting myself in dating it a little how long I've been here. But the reason that we need to do the irrigation system is the wire that's in the ground, when it's pulled, will stretch, and we're starting to lose continuity to the head. So we lose control of the head. So, and then also too, most of the heads are all plastic. So what happens is I have a set point of 180, and that set point is starting to go by. So what ends up happening is it's wearing out the plastic inside. So then I can't control the water where I want it. So if it's on the greens or on tees or on fairways, it's going past its set points, which means I'm not getting the water to manage the water in the way I want to. That is the reason for the irrigation system. It's basically its life expectancy is about 20 years for wire in the ground. The new system will be different. It will be, instead of each head having a wire, it will be a jacketed wire of with a two-wire path. And it's one wire that's jacketed, so it should last longer than what we have now, which is just regular 14 gauge aluminum wire. If it gets a nick in the wire when it's pulled, eventually it rots out and water gets in. Water's not, even though you're putting water out, still not your friend, because doesn't work well with the wires. The irrigation system has served us well, let me put it that way. The golf course has come from 700 heads to 2,075 is what we got now. But it allows us to control the water in the manner in which we need to put it where we want. Instead of just willy-nilly in it, we can exactly, I mean, greens get 6 minutes a night at most. That's huge compared to what we used to have to just pump the water out just to try to get it to do what we wanted it to. So the best thing to do is at this point, and that's why the irrigation's in front of you, is so hopefully we can get another 25 or 30 years out of the system. You want me to keep going, or you want to stop with irrigation?
And I would
No, yeah,
mention-
can we, I'll just ask questions for.
I mentioned real fast that we are planning to fund this entirely out of golf receipts.
Okay, so that
Our
was the
dedicated funds.
controversy last year, whether you could do that or not. This year, we're confident we can do that.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes.
I'm going to react to the word controversy. I would not categorize
Well,
it that way.
disagreement in whether that was allowed or not allowed.
The question that the finance director at the time had is whether or not the receipts reserve fund that they had was sufficient to pay the debt service. It was, it is, it will be. And so, as the director has said, this is something we would be looking to go out to borrow, so there would be a debt exclusion, there would be a companion question to go before town meeting, and we would go out to the bond market. So we've got our AAA bond rating, and they have more than enough set aside for them to fully pay the debt service. So theoretically speaking, I look at this project as already fully funded.
So, I'll start with Mark.
Why wouldn't you replace the pipe? If this is gonna be good for 20 or 25 years,
Well, the reason that we made the choice before was the pipe that we put in is the gas line. It's a fused gas line. So when you do gas, they fuse it. The pipe is almost 20 times the width of what regular PVC pipe would be. So the density of the pipe is so thick that it doesn't need to be replaced. There's no damage
And
whatsoever.
when you first replaced it in 2005 or
Five.
2005, they estimated the lifespan 50 to 100
50 to
years.
100 years.
And so the town made an extra investment to,
At that moment.
at that time, which was a very smart investment, so that we wouldn't have to dig up the golf course at this point. So it may go, that pipe should last this entire cycle and maybe even another one beyond it, another 50 years or so.
just one other question, it may be more for the finance committee, towards Joe. That's a great thing that you can pay for it out of golf revenues, the debt. I'm thinking of like the harbor with some of our big capital expenses. Why wouldn't we have something like that for the harbor to handle the interest of the debt payments for large capital expenditures?
Sure, the quick answer is that what they're relying upon is a receipts reserved fund that is articulated under the finance statutes. And it talks about a myriad of uses. It starts out actually with ambulances. And within that, they also talk about golf operations. So there may be other harbor-based receipts reserve funds, and if that's the case, we could do it in the same manner. But they have it because they've had the receipts reserve fund, how many years now?
I've been here 10 years and it predates me.
Yeah.
So it was
I
right
mean,
about,
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So we don't, you don't have to tap into operating expenses so much.
so when we originally set this up, the conversation was exactly that. We don't want to go back to the taxpayers. I said if we keep the golf course in the manner in which we can charge a little bit more, take some of that money to fund back into the golf course, so then we're not going back and attacking the tax base. Because what was happening before was we would get up in front of town meeting, and with police, fire, and everyone else asking for the same stuff, we couldn't fund the things we needed to maintain the golf course at the level we needed to. So one of the things that we came up with at that point was exactly what we're talking about now, a receipts reserve.
Just in terms of, it's just moving money from one bucket to the other. You still have to come up with the money. If you take that money away from the harbor, you still need money to finance the general budget, right?
Not with a receipts reserve. Receipts reserve fund is exactly that. It's not general fund. It's
That-
other
no,
receipts
no,
reserved.
that I
for
understand, but if you're funding 100 million for a budget, let's just use round numbers,
Are you talking operating or
your operating budget.
capital or debt service?
No, your operating budget.
So the overall operating budget?
Right now, that, let's say, I'm making these numbers up, 10 million from harbor goes into that 100 million. That's part of the 100 million.
So that would be general receipts.
Right. It's part of the general receipts,
Yeah,
correct?
that's not, I don't believe that that's what Mr. Kelleher was getting to, and that's not not what I was speaking to.
So what's the nuance? I'm missing it.
So we're talking about their receipts reserve fund, which is under chapter 44 of the statutes. It's a finance mechanism that they're allowed to set aside certain portions raised by operations or however it states. We can get you the particular language. I usually have it in my big book anyway. That's separate and distinct from, well, sorry. What we would then have for their debt is the debt service itself, general obligation debt,
Right.
is a line item in the operating budget under Article 4. So that portion that relates to them, we grab that borrowing source, we reference it during the motion and in the table. If there is similar debt for the harbor and there is a similar fund, we would do it in the same way. But that's not impacting upon local receipts because it's two different buckets, two different categories.
But you're not putting, for the harbor, in the case of the harbor, normally that money would go into local receipts.
No, we don't normally anticipate receipts reserved. It's separate and distinct. It's a different column that gets populated. We do not, it's not like we're taking it out of the general fund to put it in the receipts reserved to take
Okay.
it out.
Okay,
Receipts reserved and local receipts are different.
okay, okay. Yep.
So the golf receipts reserve fund, what is the formula that determines how much of your revenue goes into that fund each year?
So normally we address this with the select board when we do our rates and fees. But, so over the years, the select board has approved $140 from every annual pass sold.
Okay?
Would go into the receipt reserve fund, and then $4 from every greens fee sold goes into it. Not every greens fee, the 9 hole rounds would be $2, half of that.
Uh-huh.
But there's a formula.
What's the balance in that fund now?
We've been saving up in anticipation for this project.
Right.
Our funds have about $600,000 in them to start the debt on this service. And then there's between our dedicated funds, there's about a mechanism of $200,000 annually.
That's how much those fee
Yes.
carve-outs
Yes,
add to the fund each year,
Yes.
200,000. That's great, because 200,000 is about what you'd need to pay the debt service on 2.5 million, maybe even a little bit more than enough.
and they're paying right now the obligation on our 2017 debt to build a car barn, to our car barn
We're
project.
just about finished with that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Other questions on the bunker renovation? Yes.
I got a couple, Josh. One is, the system that you're putting in is, it is one entire system, right? You couldn't, for example, use it on half the holes, and
No.
so it's either
One
all
con-
or nothing.
It's all or nothing. It's
Okay.
it's one
And-
continuous loop.
And what about the disruption of the play? I know you said it's gonna be in the wintertime, and most people,
So
of course.
normally what happens when you start construction, the way that we would do it is we'd start right after Columbus Day, and then we would close down one hole basically a week. So they'd have a week to work on that hole. And then when they're done, we go to the next one.
But all that's required, but you're not needing to dig,
No, so we're basically digging up
Yeah.
the head,
right,
and then we're pulling a wire right by
Okay.
the head.
yeah.
And the only thing that's gonna be basically changed out is the plastic swing joint, which connects to the pipe underneath, and the head.
So you use the existing wire to pull the new wire?
Correct.
So the disruption in play is one hole per week, is that what you're saying?
Roughly one hole per week, depending on Mother Nature.
And does that cut down on the cost to play, or is that allowed for, how does that work
Well,
out?
very low impact. Right now, we're planning on, we would, in a best case scenario, if everything gets approved and we get this out the bid on in a good timely manner, we would start right after, the day after Columbus Day.
Yeah,
Spend
in
2 weeks
next year.
moving everything here that the person's gonna need to
And
mobilize.
that has very little impact. We anticipate very little revenue after Columbus Day,
okay,
so they have very little impact.
thanks.
Next project.
Bunkers. So basically, the bunkers, normally a bunker is, before it needs total renovation, is somewhere between 10 and 15 years. Last time we did bunkers was in 2017, so and the amount of play that we have, they see a lot of business. We do roughly around 45 to 48,000 rounds at Cranberry Valley, and our bunkers take the pounding. At this point, you're looking at roughly the tail end of 15 years, so they're at the point where they need some love. And what I mean by that is new sand, the liners that we have in there now, the machine's pulling the liner out, so we need to address those issues. At this point, it's really in the golf course business, we call it the red-headed stepchild. It's the last thing that gets attention, is the bunkers. It's a hazard. So usually you want the turf to look good and everything else. Bunkers is a hazard. So we want to make sure that we're doing the golf course in the manner which it should be, and for the amount we charge, bunkers need some attention. The way that we're gonna do bunkers and the way we've done them in the past, we put a liner. This year, I've talked to an architect that we've done business with before, and he thinks that we should do it a little differently. And what I mean by that is we won't put a liner in the bunker. So normally a bunker is constructed, you basically put a hole in, put some drainage in, put a liner in, put sand. The reason for the liner is so that nothing comes up from the bottom and brings stones and stuff up to the top. Now we're not gonna do a liner. What we're gonna do is take sod, flip it upside down, and let that be the barrier, so that when we go with the machine, we're not pulling it up, it will stay where it is. So,
Where do you get the sod from?
we ordered it out of Rhode Island. We
Okay.
get most of our sod from Rhode Island, is where everyone gets sod pretty much at this point. There's a place down there. We use a cheaper sod than what we would put around the outside. We already have irrigation around bunkers, so it really is just a redo of, a reconstruct of what we've got, right, pretty much. We're not gonna take bunkers out. We're not gonna make any changes to the bunkers. We're just gonna resod the faces and then put new sand and flip the sod.
And you're doing, is this all the bunkers?
All 55 bunkers.
And that's usually how you do it? It's easier to do them all at once instead of doing them gradually over
Well,
time?
Understand, the hardest thing about construction is this: when you've got equipment going on the golf course, the less construction you can have out there, the better you are. And the reason you say that is because every time I send a piece of equipment across that golf course, I gotta fix it.
Right.
So if I'm gonna go out there, I'd rather do it once than have to do it 3 seasons in a row.
And we do annual maintenance also on like the faces of the bunkers. We resod them regularly, but this is the big job
This
of
is-
digging out the drainage.
Yep, redoing drainage and stuff.
Well,
Yeah, thanks. I'm kind of a specialist on bunkers. I spend a lot of time in bunkers.
Understand?
The sand is really critical, and you can get good sand and you can get bad sand, right?
Correct.
So, is this, what do you do, put that out for bid, or do
So,
you-
well, it depends. We have a USGA spec. What I mean by that is a certain amount of a specification to the type of sand you can use. The reason that is the case is that sand is blasted up on your green, which I can't have a certain angular sand because it's gonna clog up my filter on the green. To understand, if I'm blasting sand on that green every time, it needs to be a certain spec so that it doesn't. A green, I'm gonna give you a real quick synopsis. A green basically is a filter. From the top it's green, but below that I have soil. And every time that someone walks and the machine walks on there, I create compaction. Every time every time I'm watering or whatever, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter and squeezes out the air out of the soil, which then causes me problem with my roots in the plant that I'm trying to grow. So we solve that problem with aerification. We go in, we poke holes, and we put sand. Well, I want that sand to match up with the sand I have in my bunkers so I don't get what we call silt, and it locks up the top of the soil. So we have to use a certain type of sand, and USGA spec has a certain spec that we can go to that we use to put in the bunker, so then that we're not clogging up the filter on the green.
so in reality, there's not a bidding you don't put it out to 6 people and?
No. I use my specs, and I will then reach out to certain people before I get ready to go. And on county bid and on state bid, we have vendors that we use that we can go get the sand that we want. Now, there's that, I know everyone loves that Florida sand, that white sand that everyone loves. It's too fine for here.
Yeah.
It clogs up my filter. So we use a lot of what we call a Cape Cod mix, or almost like a mason sand here, so that the angle isn't too sharp, that it settles out, and it leaves me pore space in the green.
How about that sand that the Makepeace Properties has for sale? It's called, I can't think what the name of it is, but it's widely used. Oyster Harbor's uses it.
Well, again, that's a double wash. Again, I'm gonna say to you, that's a double wash sand out of New Jersey. What it does is it doesn't allow a fried egg, basically. The ball hits, and
Right.
it sits, and it rolls back to where it is. The cost for that, I won't even get into it.
Okay.
That's why we use local as best we can. Most of our sand is local sand, almost like a double wash sand that we use here in the city.
What'd you suggest?
Any more questions on the bunkers?
Just one question. So this is also presumed to be funded with debt?
Yes,
Same as
so-
the irrigation?
And that's why it's been staggered, is we worked with town finance and town administration to stagger the project so that we could afford the debt for it.
Right.
So we staggered that.
Okay. Third project. Sean, are you okay if we do the third project in this
Well,
part of the meeting?
if I could, Madam Chair, it's Golf's project. I've had it listed under facilities maintenance for transparency purposes. That's where we list all the projects. So I think it's appropriate for these gentlemen to talk about it while it's listed under facilities, because that's where we have all facilities listed.
Okay.
So it's perfect timing for them to speak about it.
And just to let you know, me and Sean have already had a conversation. He came over, we walked the building, we know pretty much. We're on lockstep pretty
Okay.
much.
Okay, good.
All right? Yes. So, the original building, 1973, was a maintenance facility at Cranberry Valley. It's a 4,800 square foot building, metal, and it's basically usable life has reached its end. It's 50 years old. I have leaks in the roof. I have holes and rust around the outside and electrical work that's needed and badly repaired.
No, I'm sorry, Sean, I don't mean to cut you off. The one thing I would mention is, this reskin of this building was approved as part of our cart barn building project in 2017. It was approved at town meeting to reskin this building. When we got quotes for it, for the reskin, they all were very problematic. In fact, companies wouldn't even give us a quote because they said the building is just beyond repair. And so, at the time we did the cart barn project, our quotes were based on a reskin that was done at another facility in town. I think it was down at the dump. And so it turns out those quotes were unrealistic. The building was beyond that. What's being recommended to us is to build an entire new building with a knee wall on it. Because, Sean, how many pieces of equipment are stored in there?
Over 30 pieces of equipment are stored in the building.
Yeah, and currently the water, if it rains, water runs right through the building, and it creates mold issues. And so, even though it was approved as part of that 2017 article town meeting where we built our cart barn, it's gone beyond that. The needs of the building are beyond what was originally intended.
So, wait a minute,
I got a question.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Back in 17, when it was approved
Yeah.
for the cart barn, part of that approval was for the reskin.
That's right.
Those dollars have been used.
Good.
Have they been used or set aside, or were they used for the cart barn?
So the cart barn project in total was $1.2 million.
Yeah.
We haven't even spent up to $1 million yet on it. It turns out the 200,000 or so that was expected to cover the reskin of the building is an unrealistic amount. And so that has not been spent.
Is there something in the balance that is applied to the 2.5 now?
No, because we plan to turn back that money, or that money's never even been taken out as debt.
So
The
my,
200,000, you're
The
saying?
200,000, yeah.
so is this really 2.3? If you
Yes.
have 2 in the bank?
Yes, you could look at it that way, I'm not sure.
That's-
But-
Well,
So
it's
officially, they have to
10%.
return it and then ask for the 2.5. Is that how it works?
I don't know yet. What I'm hearing is that the 2017 appropriation was not borrowed.
So, no, it was not. So, I mean, I have copies.
We never
of-
went to secure the debt, so there's no debt to pay.
There's no debt to pay.
So,
For the
But it's-
200,000
So,
of that?
so
Yes.
let's clarify.
Yeah.
Out of the cot bond building,
Yeah.
we've only spent just under $1 million,
And what did get approved?
1.2.
1.2.
So you got two in the bank? or
Correct.
two-
That will
set
eventually,
aside.
once we're actually at the final stages of finishing the cot bond.
Yeah.
I'm on the last phase of it right now. Whatever's left then will be returned back to the receipt reserve fund, I believe. And then at that point, we will then come back to town meeting in 2030 and ask for
2.5.
2.5 to do the building.
But you only borrowed $1 million for the cart barn. Is that what you call it?
That's true. Yeah, I believe that's true. Because I have reports on, two different debt schedules that are associated with that. It was part of, I mean, this is above my pay grade, I believe. They were two different borrowings they covered a lot of town projects. Basically, I believe, my understanding is the town borrows what it needs at that time.
Right.
And so these two borrowings, both the golf portion of it, are for under $1 million.
So what
That was
I'm,
never even borrowed yet.
what I'm hearing is that there was a set aside or an encumbrance of $200,000 from receipts reserved, that when they finish the $1 million project and they consider that project to be completely closed out, the encumbrance will go away. So there is the net result of $200,000.
So was your borrowing at 32.3, or is it 2.5? If you got already 2
I
approved,
think it would still be at 2.5,
but you got 2 in the bank.
correct, at least.
Just another question. If the building is failing so badly, why is this then put in 2030? Because then it has to go through another 5 years.
Well, we're trying to fund our projects. I mean, so that it's our third priority right now. And,
At this point, to make money, you got to make sure that the golf course is doing what it's supposed to do, and the care and the upkeep of the golf course pays for everything else. So you do what you have to do first and put gas in the car and put tires on it, so it gets where it needs to go, so then you can go and buy the things you like. And the
Good
building
answer.
is one of those things that we like.
So basically a lower priority. You don't expect it to fail in this next 5 years?
At this point, no, it's made it this long, we'll make it work until it gets there.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So you really don't need it, that's, I'm only teasing.
I understand where you're coming from. Let me put it this way. I'll be far gone when this building's being built.
So will I.
Not your problem.
So
This is a not your problem?
Well, it's not so much not my problem. It's always been, is to leave Cranberry Valley in the better shape than I found it, and that is one of the last things that was on the list to get done. So,
Horse first.
God bless you.
Building last.
Any other questions?
I just have a question, this is kind of a generic question for any building construction or roof replacement. Is there any opportunity for solar energy to be installed on top of a building like this?
So understand that we already, at Cranberry Valley, have a solar field behind that we already presently have, and we have it on the car barn. I would assume that at the same time that we do the maintenance facility, that would be a great opportunity to put solar there also.
yeah, it'd be easy to add to
It's,
the.
to be honest with you, everything is connected through maintenance, and it goes to the pump house, which is the biggest use of power, which is right next to the building, so I would
Right.
assume that it would be advantageous to put solar panels on that roof also.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Just commenting, years ago, we took a trip to the golf course. And I think with the new board, new members, I think in the spring prior to town meeting, we have a visit to the golf course, show us the building, show us the cart barn, show us where you stand and what difficulties you're having.
Would love to.
Fair enough?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
fair enough.
So we all get what we're talking about. We've done it before, and it really helped us prior to the cart barn being built.
I remember that, yes.
And it was, unless you've seen
If I
what,
could just add, there are 7 of you and 1 of me. I mean, that's 2 foursomes. Just putting it out.
yeah, but we get domed, you know. He's out playing the course.
We didn't draw up foursomes yet.
He's
I'm just
playing the
saying there could be
traps.
2.
Right, there has to be some strokes. If we're talking strokes, we're talking strokes. Let's talk strokes.
I want to
Only goes
embarrass
Stableford.
myself. All right, I think
That's it.
we're done with golf.
Thank you.
So much. It's an easy. Lee, why don't we bring you up next and your team?
Thanks, Shauna.
So, Madam Chair, members, I would interpret that to mean you're going to look at the Public Works section of the capital outlay plan, which has 2 lines, road maintenance and vehicle replacements. I believe the director will remain when the facilities maintenance director comes up, but this is purely Department of Public Works.
Right, and I guess, you know, if I look at where you were last year linked to this year, net, not including 2030, you're down about $430,000. I think a lot of that may be how you looked at road maintenance this year versus how you did last year with Chapter 90 funds, is what I'm guessing. And your vehicle replacement numbers are sort of up from last year by about 300,000, so that seems to be the gist of where we're going.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here today with Kyle Edson, my vehicle maintenance manager, and Brian Albee, our road manager. He took
Welcome.
over for Chris Nickerson, who held the job for probably 20-plus years. Was, what, a 33-year employee, I believe. Brian's been with the town since 2000. He used to manage the park department, and he was thrust into this position, and he's done a wonderful job over the last year, I think. The road maintenance, the request hasn't changed. The Chapter 90 was put in there in previous plans as a number of 1.4 million. So this request is, to 700,000, is what I have typically requested of the town and have received over the last 20-plus years, absent this current fiscal year, where we didn't have a fall town meeting. So we had no road money for FY '25 that we're in, but this is combined with the Chapter 90, which is a little less than 700,000, and we put it together. The main focus of our road maintenance plan has been to save our Chapter 90 funds and install drainage in conjunction with the with the sewering of the town. So right now, we had a huge lift. And, you know, Phase 3 of the sewer project out in East Harwich is a very large area. And Brian and his staff has gone through and identified a project of approximately 1.2? Yeah, we'll say 1.2, $1.3 million that we're doing to renew any old antiquated block basins or any problem areas in the entire sewer. And the impetus is that the last thing you want to do is pave a road and then have to come back and dig the road up, the brand-new pavement, because our catch basin's failing. So we're doing our best to coordinate that, and that's where our main focus of road maintenance has been. I believe right now Brian is looking at year 5 in the plan, and we're probably putting that back to doing some actual paving, which we've held off the last probably 3 years. You haven't seen any major road projects sponsored by us. You have certainly the gas company and others, but that we've done with town dollars in probably 4 years now. So we banked that money to be able to fund the drainage work.
So you didn't get the 700,000 last year.
I've been very frugal with the article we had from the year before.
Does this all go into a separate account where, you know, there's a separate account for road money? Or it just goes into the department? How does that sort of, how does the money?
I believe it's a line item in the department.
Well, I have a line item for something like 50,000 for ancillary stuff. Usually this is in the form of an article, and then we draft off of the article as we do work. We put the invoices against that article.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, what we're talking about on that plan, the reason why you see 700,000 is because, as the director has said, that's what the town is asked to provide.
Yes.
So we no longer put in the Chapter 90 funds because council has opined, the town gets that. And the town does not need the appropriation through town meeting. The appropriation works through the director, and I think, is it still through you or still through you and the select board?
The Chapter 90 program no
Correct.
longer requires executive
So,
sign-off.
given that it no longer requires select board, that's funds we're told every year that we get. So the intent here is to augment Chapter 90 with additional funds from the town. So last year, the finance director at the time was concerned that there was not enough funding between Chapter 90 and what we were offering in the capital plan. There was, but given that there was concern from finance on the Chapter 90, we decided to forego it. The intention was to make them whole at this at special, that we no longer had in the fall. However, I believe we've heard the director say that despite that, we still have funds available to do work, and the work that we're gonna be doing is tied to Phase 3.
But you did get the Chapter 90 funds last year.
Yes, ma'am. Every year, like clockwork, it comes
Correct.
in a little under 700. I think it was 680, something like that.
Yeah.
Did I hear something, maybe I'm not right about this, but with that billionaire's tax, that there would be more money going to roads in the state of Massachusetts?
So there is an
Laughing.
additional, yeah, there is, I think we're both chuckling at the name of the tax, but
Yes.
there are, Windfall, I believe, correct?
Yeah, they've named it different things. So the state, pretty consistently over the last, say, 5 or 6 years, they've named it Winter Recovery Act when we've had a bad winter, and they give us, usually the number's somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000. Last year, they called it, please help me, Mr. Administrator. do you
I think it
remember?
was windfall.
Was that what it was called, the
I think it was
windfall?
windfall related to the millionaire's tax.
Right.
as
Oh,
I
millionaires,
understand.
billionaires, I think it's billionaires.
And then
'cause we
generally
live in Massachusetts.
speaking, I would call it, which is meant to be a purposeful word under the Commonwealth's definitions, an earmark from the state that augments public works.
So do you anticipate your Chapter 90 funds may go up, or no?
So we don't anticipate, we always believe Chapter 90, as Link has said, is around call it 650 to 700,000, as you've seen the last 10 years or so.
Yep.
We do not, pardon the expression, we do not bank on the windfall. When we get it, we use it to the best of our ability, because it is so variable, and it's still a new program. We know that we could get more money beyond that Chapter 90 through the windfall, and other programs that are out there, such as the acronyms that relate to snow removal and what have you. So we have a very strong faith and understanding that Chapter 90, unless we hear something, through the budget process where there's drastic cuts, we expect that money to come. We do not expect the others per se, because there's no rhyme or reason yet to the available funds and what the dollar amount will be.
Is Chapter 90 use it or lose it? Or do we get to bank it and roll it
No,
forward?
I opened with saying, we have banked for the last,
Yeah.
say, 3 or 4 years, our Chapter 90 money
Right.
to build a fund to be able to keep up with the sewer project.
Right, great.
And we're in the process of doing that currently. The extra money, let's call it the extra money from the state, came last year, spend it by June 30th, and we jumped right on it. Mr. Nickerson and I jumped right on it, and we did a guardrail project. We did as they dictated. So many towns didn't, because it's hard to spend money if you don't have contracts already in place and so forth. Then the state ultimately sent a letter out saying, we're just sending these funds to your Treasury's Department. Don't worry about it. I couldn't make this up. But we did just that, and we replaced a significant amount of guardrail in town with the Core 10.
Okay. Questions on?
Would Lower County Road, when would that ever resurface? I know it was voted against at town meeting. A lot of people walking that sidewalks, just a question on Lower County Road.
It's not on my radar screen.
Sidewalks too?
I had a $4 million project. We had bid and secured, and it went down. Then we had some discussions with the Board of Selectmen, who basically instructed me to put a Band-Aid on it, which was chip seal, and that's exactly what we did.
Any other questions on roads?
I just have one thing. I noticed the sign on 39 looking for people to be hired to plow snow, I assume.
You looking for a job?
I wanted to find, no, what I wanted to try to find out, what is happening on that end of the thing? Are we, the snow budget, is it
No, sir, not-
declining, or no budget at all?
No, nothing to do with budget. This has everything to do with the last 3 years, we've had one plowable event.
Yeah.
The town requires pretty healthy insurance for you to plow as a private contractor. Last year, I asked the board, and they agreed, we put in a bonus system. So we put in a $1,500 bonus system and went up across the board on rates, and we're still losing people. That put I'd say that put a plug into the exodus we were experiencing, because you have this arm race with all the other towns raising rates all the time, the state. There just isn't enough available contractors, because they don't want to tie funds up unnecessarily, paying for insurance that they ultimately don't even get any work out of. So we have consistently lost. We will do the absolute best we can. We're not in horrible shape compared to some of our surrounding communities. That said, we used to have, well, you were just working on, 30, let's say 4 years ago, we used to have about 38 plows that we would hire, from about 20, 22 contractors. What's that now?
Yeah, we're a dozen to 15 short,
Yeah.
so.
So thus the signs are out saying if we might be able to attract any help. I'm not hopeful. I did not go back to the board this year to try to raise rates because we put a significant rate increase in last year and the price of fuel's down like $1 a gallon. So it's nothing to do with cost or finances. It's everything to do with shortage of contractors and municipalities kind of fighting over them along with the state.
The state's in
The
really
state's in
bad shape.
really tough shape.
Really tough shape.
So, but as I understand it, then, what we have in your supply right now of plowable vehicles that can adapt to a plow, that's insufficient even, I mean, is it insufficient to cover what demand exists for the limited amount of snow we get now? Am
Well, we have shored up our in-house plowing capabilities.
Yeah.
And Mr. Edson has had I won't say every, the vast majority of new vehicles, whether golf department gets a new vehicle, equip it, if it's a pickup truck, we equip it with a plow. So we have, I don't know off the top of my head, 30? Somewhere around 30 plows in-house. The golf department sends us 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So we've shored up our in-house capabilities. But with roughly 200 miles of roads and 950 roads in total, it's a tall task. So as a resident, what you may experience is it will be a little longer before your road gets plowed. It'll get done, it's just might take a little longer. We've done the best we can at trying to keep people.
Okay, yeah.
It's just, when it snows once, we've called them once in the last 3 years.
And one final question. I don't often get to be able to quiz department heads, so I tend to vary off the subject quite a bit. But what is the status of the sidewalk from, there was people coming out there and marking where the walk was going and so forth along Main Street in Harwich Center, for example? Where do we stand on that project, the sidewalk up to the high school, or the elementary school, I mean?
What project?
Okay.
We do have.
That's it? No.
Well, that was crass on my part, sir. Let me just follow that up a little bit better. We are in the process of doing a procurement to do the library sidewalk. That is a brick sidewalk, so in all likelihood, to make it right, or to, let's say to DOT standards, we would pour some concrete under that and have the bricks installed over that, so you can have an ADA compliant sidewalk there. There are numerous articles for, I believe, Harwich Center that I would like to defer to the administrator, if I may, with a plan to address that, I think that shortly.
Okay, but it's nothing in the works to 2030 anyway. I'm only going at short times now in my life, right? I take it 1 or 2 years at a time.
Only
But so
way to
up
take
to
it.
2030 then, this isn't going to happen?
Not necessarily that it's not going to happen. What the director can also tell you is that we have right-of-way easements that are coming before town meeting in the spring for the safe routes to schools, which covers South Street and Main Street.
And the property in front of Mr. Doan's property as
Right.
well.
So that is a significant part of what was originally, as I understood it, from my predecessor, the center to the center from the center. And it was being able to walk from 204 Sisson Road through Harwich Center to the community center. And so a big part of that is being completed through the Harwich Elementary's program that they were doing on their own to start on safe routes to schools. What the directors mentioned is there are previous articles that allow for design of sidewalks that we have not done anything in between yet, other than what's happening at the library and what's happening at the elementary school. And if I could, Madam Chair, further, I would say that on the plowing, it was not the town that insisted on the insurance, rather it was the town's insurance provider which is Maya, which all the other towns will be brought into compliance one way or the other. So it's not that we're looking to be onerous, we are looking to satisfy the requirements of our insurance provider.
Just one other
Love
question.
insurance companies.
The town's 700,000 a year, is that debt, or is it just an ongoing operating expense?
We've typically done it through free cash.
Okay.
Well, sorry,
There
I
has
believe
been.
in years past, there used to be borrowings.
Yes.
So 2 finance directors ago, it was suggested that we not do that for debt, so presently we haven't done it as debt. I believe for my funding plan so far, I have it as part of free cash.
Okay, any more questions on road? Frank, just speak up if you have any questions, because I keep forgetting you're there, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm here. I'll let you know.
I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Rich.
And it's a matter of all these papers and your request forms. We have Public Works, road maintenance, and you've got a series 700 requests. On the paperwork, there's only 3 request forms for 700,000.
So if you look, what they have is present year, because we did that for budgeting purposes. The middle form are the existing years that were already on the plan. So if you look at the top of that form, it says 27 to 29.
Okay,
And then they're adding the new year, so to speak.
okay, so,
Just one.
Those 3 forms
That's
cover
mixed.
5 years.
okay.
And thank you for asking.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and it's a matter of how to categorize stuff. There's a lot of stuff under facilities maintenance that you requested, and it shows that Department of Public Works is the requester, or not the, yes, the requester. And unfortunately, it shows up there, you don't have to describe it. I guess Sean describes it, but yet you're responsible for it. And I think that's really confusing. There's 3 or 4 or 5 capital projects that are of high value, and they're requested by Link, which means he's responsible in the end. Town hall repairs.
Madam Chair, if I could, to the member, are you talking Public Works or Facilities Maintenance?
I'm talking about, the form says Public Works, DPW facilities. Okay?
Okay, I mean, we
They're
can,
under, yeah, all I'm saying is, who is, the responsibility when we look for funding and so forth and discussion, is Link part of that discussion? It's under Sean's list, and it's sort of misleading because it's a high value and there's dollars associated with it, but there's 5 of them here that are really DPW, which include air conditioning, power supply step-down transformer.
so the descriptions on the forms we've used the entire time that I've been here as administrator.
Yeah?
Because we're differentiating between the roads, which is purely a public works project, and I've advocated in years past that all vehicle replacements for every department should fall under public works.
Okay, so those two are fine.
Right, so
All I'm saying
then,
is
separate from that,
Yep.
there's been copious, no, not copious for discussions, but a lot of discussions over the last 5 years of what is the true cost of our buildings. So the facilities maintenance section on the capital outlay plan and all of the forms that go to that are public works, because Mr. Libby works for Mr. Hooper works for me. That's DPW
Okay.
facilities. And so that's why I asked, because we're not to facilities yet. We've got our
I understand.
vehicle and our roads maintenance folks.
I understand. All I'm saying is, there's 7 of us now, 6 are brand new.
Sure.
And it gets confusing when in the past 5 years, we've gone through this exercise, and it's been explained. But I think it becomes a little more confusing if there's not a slash or something that says, yeah, it's DPW. Nowhere here does it say it's facilities maintenance. That's what I'm saying. On the form, there doesn't appear to be facilities maintenance. That's what I'm saying.
He says DPW facilities.
All I'm saying is, okay, if that's the discussion, fine.
Okay, and I would just argue for ease of presenting, putting them all in one category, makes sense to me anyway, because then Sean wouldn't have to be at every meeting to talk about them, you know, for every department, so having them all in one category to me at least.
Okay.
I thought made sense, but, okay. Vehicles. Now that we're done with a little procedure there, you want to talk about your vehicles?
Okay. The cost of new vehicles, beginning with COVID, has had a price increase of 15 to 20% per year. This year is coming down, Kyle told me it's more like 10 to 15%. So the increases are slowing, but it is absolutely mind-boggling. People perceive supply chain issues are over. They are not in vehicle maintenance. They are not in vehicles. It takes us, generally speaking, a year to more when we order a vehicle till we get it delivered. And yes, those are significant increases. I think the increases are driven by those two facts, as well as the EPA mandating more emissions controls that are more expensive beginning next year. And with that, I think I'd like to turn over any specific questions you may have about the vehicles to Mr. Edson, who, by the way, manages the entire town's fleet of, I think, 160 vehicles, something like that, more, and does an absolute amazing job. I think you'd hear that from fire and police and water and everybody else, that Kyle and his staff just, they work miracles.
Great. So Kyle, can you kind of walk us through, help us understand like how you look at replacements, you know, what the timing of them generally is, how, if that's changed?
The timing, I usually, with highway vehicles, usually something like a one-ton truck, I try to replace every 10 years. We are a little bit behind right now. And any bigger trucks, medium, heavy-duty trucks, usually 15 to 20 years replacement, depending on condition. You know, some may be in worse condition than others, have more problems. Rust is a big issue since we use straight salt. We're always trying to combat that, but it's a tough battle.
So,
If I may, Madam Chair?
yes,
Kyle and I, each year, with the Capitol, sit down, we have this, usually it's a color sheet. I made a copy this morning, wasn't. Very colorful sheet that breaks us into fiscal years. And this list represents all DPW vehicles. And we go through, he gathers mileage, and then we discuss what's failing, what's he really throwing a lot of maintenance dollars into. And we usually talk about we're throwing good dollars into bad vehicles. He tries to, say, MacGyver whatever he can to keep things moving, but it's challenging, and it's a very large fleet.
okay. Yep,
How do you charge the other departments?
I believe the only other department, the water is an enterprise fund, so they're the only ones that are cross-charged. I believe Kyle bills parts for them directly, and then quarterly they build a labor
Yes,
bill.
labor bill.
So police and fire,
Police and fire are all in the general
Okay.
fund, are funded out of general fund.
okay.
So there's no need for any cross charges on that. When vehicle maintenance was centralized under the DPW in 2012 or 14 or something, there was expense funds that came from those departments for that.
Link, I'm a little partial to electric vehicles. Is there any thought ever to remove some of this mystery of repairing vehicle engines and gas and oil and all that stuff and shifting to some electric vehicle?
I believe we give it thought because we're part of the Green Communities Act. I know Kyle was prepared for this meeting and had some materials on it. My understanding is that a lot of the vehicles that we utilize, there aren't alternatives for currently. Electric will, in the heavy industry, lend itself to stuff that is somewhat stationary, like let's say a lift truck or a boom truck or something like that. It's not generally what we do. You want to chime in?
Well, most of our vehicles that plows, street sweepers, things like that, I mean, with electric, if they go out, they can only plow for a certain amount of time, they have to come back, and then they have to charge. If we have a storm that's 2 days that we need to plow, that's a lot of charging time, with plow trucks sitting there.
Do
And
they even make them?
They-
Those vehicles in electric format?
they are, they
They're
just.
starting to,
Yes,
okay.
they are.
Are they,
past
how
few
much more
years.
expensive are they?
I don't know exactly, but they are much more expensive.
Yeah. Is it possible, Joe, that we could get that list from you
Yeah.
and I could share it with the team?
Sure.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think we submitted it with Capital. I'll resubmit it.
Natasha has it?
I believe so. Okay. I'll re-email it to you.
Sure.
I think of the trucks that I mean, I know the big, I'm not trying to shift those to electric, but it seems like there are 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know how many, but multiple vehicles that are really just pickups that people drive. Sean drives up to Brooks Academy or whatever, that kind of a vehicle.
Certainly, the smaller pickup trucks
Yeah.
are available.
Yeah.
I believe, I don't know what the multiple of costs are, but how much more is an electric, say, F-250? Do
No,
they
see,
even
I-
make them in 350s?
No, F-250, 350, they don't make.
two-
So
two-
a 150, the cost would probably be $30,000 to $40,000 more.
And a 150 is not something we purchase, is not big enough, substantial enough for most of what we do.
Yes.
Are these level 2 for charging stations? Do you know?
It would be.
Say again.
What's that? What is that road there? Oh, those, that one. Oh,
No. The ones that we're contemplating.
yes.
They're level 2, yeah. Excuse me. So level 2 is what we're working on for schoolhouse parking lot. Looking to build one station that has 2 ports, so 2 vehicles. The town would have to retrofit the DPW complex. It's doable and there's funds there, but before we can buy them, we have to make sure we have sufficient charging stations for them. We wouldn't want to rely upon any other locations such as the Pleasant Lake Park and Ride or things like that. Not impossible, but not yet factored into the plan.
I think it's because of the nature of what we do. Snow removal is an excellent example. Just, emergencies come. What do? You shut it down so you can go plug it in? It's coming, no doubt it's coming. I just don't think it's there quite yet for our industry.
Mark?
Kyle, you have a great reputation, so I'm not going to question the minutiae.
Mark has the color sheet.
But I do have the color sheet from '24. Is that what you're working off of? And I guess the follow-up question I would have, if a vehicle has low mileage, not much rust, do you adjust it based on that? You do, okay. Do you check the water vehicles as well? Are you responsible for those as well? Okay. One thing that struck my mind, you replaced a big vehicle, a diesel, Mack, I think 500,000 miles.
Yes.
And I did notice on some of the water vehicles, maybe even the street sweeper vehicle, 60, 70. It just kind of caught my eye. 500,000 diesels. I was in the trucking industry. We'd go 1 million miles with some of these Macks.
Yep.
Why 50 grand to 70,000 miles replace?
Like 70,000 miles to replace?
I think I saw some of the water, some things, maybe the sweeper dump truck was like 50 or 70, I don't really know, but.
Mainly, it's rust issues
Okay.
that we're having. And that water department vehicles, they plow, and it's the straight salt that we use in the plowing. It's
Okay, straight salt's a problem. Can you do anything like you do with an undercoating?
Yep, we do.
do.
All our vehicles that we buy are all undercoated,
Okay,
but salt gets everywhere.
so it gets on the body.
We wash them off every time, we get some good weather during the winter, we'll wash all the vehicles underneath, anytime we can, to get the salt off.
Okay. Thank you for doing such a great job for the town, really.
Other questions on vehicles? Okay, so I think, Lee, you're You're done? No more?
Well, Link's
torture?
not done.
Why do you say that?
Kyle and
Oh,
Brian
well,
are done.
Kyle
Link
is
has to
coming.
join
I would
soon.
just ask the same question on, may I ask the same question on vehicles, about source of funding? Is this debt, but perhaps shorter-term debt because of the life expectancy?
So we haven't been doing them as debt, we've been doing them as free cash. We could, but as you've just heard about the wear and tear on them, the problem comes is what is the true life cycle? And so in some cases, if we're talking less than 10, it's less advantageous to do the borrowing.
Right.
But it is something we always contemplate.
How about ISIS? What is their refurbishing of vehicle policy?
I don't know what you're referring to, sir.
You say 70,000 miles, it's time to replace it, but I'm thinking, what are these guys over in Syria and
Sean had military
those guys seem to
experience
be
there.
running
You
their
wanna
trucks
chime in?
forever.
You know,
There's no,
You're allowed to say no comment.
Yes, please do, so we can move on. All right. I'm shutting that line of questioning down. So welcome, Sean. Thank you. We did a tour of Brooks Academy this morning, and Sean was very helpful in walking us through that. We appreciate that. So I'm going to let you just start with the project as you want. I know, Joe, Brooks Academy is still not on the plan.
Correct. I can talk about it now, I can talk about it later, whatever you want to do.
You want to talk about it now? We're going to get that one. Since we did the site visit, we'll do that one.
Sure, so it wouldn't be the facilities maintenance director to initiate that. Sean and I have been working through the select board members, specifically Mr. Howell and Mr. Handler. I believe the latest request for information, was that 2 weeks ago or last week?
Thursday of 2 weeks ago.
All right, so.
2 weeks ago today.
2 weeks ago, they looked for more information from Sean and I. We provided it. I met with Select Board Member Handler yesterday. He had asked me some questions about other funding sources. So I do anticipate that there'll be a request, but I'm looking for direction specifically from those two individuals.
So, I guess for me, I don't know how others feel, but, you know, we're sort of a year into this, right, since it didn't go through last year. We're still talking about it. I think what I understand is everybody's sort of agreed what the scope of work is. It's not as maybe far apart.
I would not agree that we're all on the same page on scope of work.
So,
I think that remains the major salient issue.
so when you say we, you mean the
All parties,
select board?
all parties that have been discussing the matter.
Okay. It just is.
If I could, so
Yeah.
I'll put it out there again. Sean, first and foremost, continues to do the phenomenal work that he does for all buildings. Sean, and it's been articulated many times, but I'll put it out there again. Sean came to me during this process last year and said, generally speaking, if I may, and correct anything I say, that he believes the best practice, and I agree with him, both under procurement and guidance from the Commonwealth and others, is to put everything together to get the project done. You know, just amalgamate everything and move forward. And that's what we tried to do last year. That's what we presented to you folks. So let me be clear, the capital outlay plan is my responsibility to build. I work through you folks to have the public conversations, and then we present it to the select board and the finance committee. The fact remains, the select board, I believe in late January, early February, determined that they did not approve of the funding source, which was sale of land. I think the total amount was 1.5 million, and we were looking at 1.15 million, right? So the board opted not to go with that funding source. There were no other funds available. The board had at least 2 or 3 discussions on it. The board opted to not move forward on that. That is their right as the executives, so that's where we are today. We are all talking about next steps for Brooks Academy. So I have been mindful of the fact that there is no application yet for any of the years, if I remember correctly, for Brooks Academy Museum.
There's nothing on,
Say again?
there's nothing on there for Brooks
Thank
Academy.
you. So, as I contemplate the budget for fiscal year '26, I have funds set aside. Right now, it's free cash that can weigh in on, or excuse me, that could be relied upon for the benefit of getting the project done. So the select board is looking at what they want that to be. The building is under their care, custody, and control, as they all are. So Mr. Libby and I have been ready and willing and able to have meetings with the select board members and anyone else they want to have in that conversation. Again, we were prepared for a meeting 2 weeks ago, last week and this week. Again, one of the members last night asking about other available funds, and I told them that there may be other available funds.
So and you know this, I mean, I've talked about this a lot, I talked about this last year, although I wasn't able to say it in public. I really feel like we're conflating what is a capital item versus how we fund it. It is a capital item, we want to consider it, right? I don't understand why we don't just put it in the plan and then let the select board do their negotiation and determination. It seems like that's going on.
Because presently, that's not the directive from the select board. Ultimately, they are the owners of the building and the owners of the plan, and they put the articles on the warrant. I don't disagree with any of that. I would also suggest, however, this is not insurmountable. We have time, we have resources, we have the discussions, and we have money.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna just, and you all can either agree with me or disagree with me, but, you know, last year, we were excluded from that whole process as you know, what went on, what came off. We didn't get to review that, we didn't review funding last year, and now I feel like we're submitting a plan that's incomplete, because we have 2 projects actually that aren't on this plan. The Great Sand Lakes, if that is something that's gonna be done in the next 5 years, and Brooks Academy, and it is discouraging.
If I could, Madam Chair, I don't disagree with any of that. That is absolutely what should be part of the conversation. I believe you're targeting December 9th, not December 2nd, because we're going to have a meeting on the 3rd to talk about debt and other things, I believe. Is that correct?
And that we'll vote on all the projects, and we'll do the
Correct.
funding, right?
Right.
On the 9th. No, I'm sorry, on the 3rd.
So, no, not necessarily. The charter's very clear that I have to build the funding mechanism, and if I need assistance on that. So I'm going to be presenting what I believe will be the funding. The final act on the funding is whether the board puts that article, as you know, we have typically three different sources that we've used. So it isn't going to be that you direct what the funding is.
No, and we know that. That's not what I'm saying.
So then
at
my
all.
overall point is, this is an excellent conversation that I would urge you all to have as the capital outlay. I can speak for myself as town administrator. When the two of us, this board and I, meet the select board and the finance committee jointly
Oh, we will.
on December
We will
9th.
have it, yeah, I definitely will have it, but do you,
Just a comment, is there a problem now, since this is part of our role, is to put things that we believe need to be considered in this? Can we put this money for the Brooks Academy in now, rather than kind of wait and fight over it in December?
I would argue that you're overstepping your authority. I have to build the plan. I rely upon you folks to go through the process. So if you voted to put something on the plan, and I don't agree with it, then we have a crisis, so to speak. So to me,
That's not the intention, to
Sure.
create a crisis.
Right.
The intention is for this full transparency, to get it on the plan, like anything else is on the plan right now. That it's, by missing, it could just disappear somehow. So the idea for transparency is, can we just give it a sheet and put it on the plan now and discuss it as we go?
I don't know how we would be able to do that without dollar amounts and without specificity of what we're looking to do completely. There are ongoing conversations.
I completely understand that.
Sure.
I completely understand that, but I think there is a dollar amount that would be reasonable, so that I'm just trying to question whether this committee can say, let's put it out here, or not.
I think you'd be operating outside the boundaries of what the charter expects you and I to be doing.
Okay.
However, I want to remain to try to be clear. I articulated at public meetings this year, meaning 2024,
Yeah.
did the board want to have a conversation with capital outlay? I don't want to do anything to injure the relationships that I've had with any of you, and certainly as this public body as it exists. I've said from day one that I understand the value of the system our charter creates. The board, as a board, opted not to include you in the conversation. That's not a criticism, that's a fact. So I put that out there for the record. But I also want to put out there, because I get a little bit frustrated, and that's not where my voice is meant to be right now. There are narratives out there that we are late, that we are behind. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am ready, willing, able, and prepared with my colleagues in finance to offer a full capital outlay plan, fiscal years 26 through 30. I'm ready, willing, and able to add for Brooks Academy. I'm ready, willing, and able to add for a $35+ million Phase 3A project in either 26, 27, or 28. But those are going to be policy and decisions that have to be made by the Select Board. The charter requires us to go through the process that we're going through. The charter requires me as town administrator and you as capital outlay to present to the Finance Committee and the Select Board in December. The fact that we were targeting December 2nd was great. The fact that we're, I think, solid for December 9th is even better. That doesn't have to be the end of it, because for me, the next step is, all right, you've heard the plan. I'm actively building warrant articles. So I already have warrant articles, draft warrant articles, they're notes, so I will not release them under a public records request because they're notes. But I have, as I've done in years past, funding source from free cash, funding source from borrowing, so debt exclusions, there's gonna be probably 2. Funding sources from other sources, like the receipts reserved, et cetera. And I think that's it. There might be the Chapter 9, well, actually, no, there is no Chapter 90 as we've heard from the director. So right now, our fiscal year 2026 plan, which is $8,527,000, I think I got it right without looking at it, is fully funded with the available information I have today. So those articles can be created, the funding sources will be there. There's gonna be weeks, if not months, of discussion and debate on this.
So just a shorthand on this one. We don't have the power as the capital outlay to add that item to this plan, is that correct?
That's my interpretation.
And the roadblock for that, just to make sure we're all clear, is this discussion with the select board, is that correct?
I don't want to use the word roadblock. I am appointed
All
by
right,
and I
come
work
up with
for.
another-
But I've tried to be clear over 5 years.
Has it been
If I may,
okay, yeah.
Chapter 4 says, for the town administrator, it's the job description of the role that I possess,
Sure.
shall be responsible for the capital outlay plan and may work with. Chapter 9, capital outlay. Chapter 9 says you assist the administrator as the administrator develops the plan. And if asked, you help the administrator with the funding. So what I'm saying is, it's not that I don't need help. I have 3 sources. If we find through the discussion today, the discussion in December, and the discussion afterwards, that there is concern and consideration in the community of, do we really want to use those funding sources? Then I think we call this group back together, because you are the public body that gives the transparency to all of this. So I wouldn't say roadblocks. To me, it's all procedural, and we are 7 months, I believe, away from town meeting. Despite that, I could have it ready for you next month.
So forgive us if we are not all trusting here, but that's not what happened last year. We were excluded from any further discussions after we submitted the budget in
I haven't
December.
disagreed with that.
So-
What I'd hope to hear is that it's an understanding that the town administrator, Joe Powers, did not exclude.
No, and I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying, it's disappointing to me, I'll use
Sure.
me,
Yep.
to move forward with a budget and a plan that I don't think is complete. And my concern is, because we have been not included in any of the discussions around Brooks Academy, that will just continue. And I think, you've got a full fleet of people here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some really smart business, finance people, legal minds. It's everything you could ask for. And then we get left out of the process. And so I'm trying to advocate that doesn't happen. I haven't been successful, but I'm going to continue to advocate for that to happen. So you're not going to be surprised as I do that moving forward.
No, I certainly wouldn't. I know you're looking at me and you're speaking to the record, so as I look to you and speak to the record, I agree.
Yeah, I know you
Our
do.
charter is, there are instances where the charter is not clear.
Yeah.
This is not one of them. And we, administration, select board, capital outlay, finance committee, bylaw charter review, have taken efforts to further refine what we do on capital. I think it was a unfortunate series of events, and I articulated the same, and I would continue to do so. And I think there's less risk nowadays for me to do that.
Madam Chair,
I'll say it that way.
May I ask a question about the process for the capital plan? Do you, Joe, do you send a request for proposals out to departments so that you make sure you get all of their ideas for potential capital projects at some point in the process?
No, what I do is I say the process will begin, fill out your forms.
Okay.
So there's no editing whatsoever by me
So we see
during
all the
this.
forms that were submitted.
Say again?
We see all of the forms that were submitted.
Correct, absolutely.
So who would submit the form for Brooks Academy? Would it be the
I
Historical
suspect,
Society?
I suspect,
or-
given the discussion on it, well, it wouldn't be the Historical Society, they're a private group.
Okay,
It wouldn't be necessarily the Brooks Academy Museum Commission, because no committees have been doing the forms. It's departments that do the forms.
so. it would
Facilities
be-
Maintenance Director, the DPW Director, and I, probably in reverse order, me, Link, Sean, would be the ones responsible for getting that form in, once we have clarity of direction from the Select Board.
So it's because there's not a department that otherwise, that's in charge of the operations of the
Sean
building?
are responsible for the building, so they would
building.
put the form together.
And they-
Normally, they would put the form together, it would go to Joe, there would be some discussion.
As they did last
Joe would bring
year.
it to us.
Right.
But this particular project is working, I'm gonna say, in reverse,
For whatever reasons.
for whatever reason. And some of us may not have.
Is there, so there's not enough information yet to put a form together for the Brooks Academy project?
The original proposal that was removed from the plan last year with the dollar amount remains to be seen whether that is the full dollar amount. There have been discussions. I know some folks are now questioning whether there is actually a public body known as a stakeholders group. I'll leave that to the lawyer, to the town clerk, and to the Division of Open Government to opine otherwise. Regardless, there are 2 select board members who have been tasked by the full select board to weigh in on this particular project. So as they analyze the information that Sean has provided them, I expect that they will be giving further direction. And I fully hope, as I talked to one of the members yesterday and advised him of the schedule, I fully expect that you will have an opportunity at a regular meeting before we present in joint session as required by the charter.
So they would instruct Sean to submit the form?
No, they would direct me as town administrator.
Rich, did you wanna say something?
I'd like to continue on, but in plain English, this group is a support group to the town administrator. We presented last December to the executives of of the town to make a decision. What's lacking was a communication back of why their decision was made. And I think that's the problem that we're encountering, is that we don't know why we didn't have any input to the decision. Their decision, whether we could impact it or not, we
That-
had to make the impact in December.
I'm not looking to impact it. I know I don't have any authority to impact anything, but I also believe, Rich, that we represent sort of the taxpayer here, right? We're sort of reviewing on behalf of,
And I couldn't disagree with you more, except in a support function and presenting what we have come up with in December, or whatever date you want to call it, to a group of executives, call that the select board. They have to make the decision with the information we provided.
correct, which is why I personally don't see why we don't just put a number on here and then let the select board decide, but, we keep going round about it.
Yeah, let's continue
Yeah.
on.
Okay,
I have a question, if I might
Yes.
ask it.
one more question, then we'll move on.
One more. You mentioned earlier that there was some action by the select board relative to the setting of these numbers and the reinstalling them in the budget. Some numbers got put in, some numbers didn't get put in. There were 3 items at the town meeting that the town meeting, our legislative body, directed that they be reconsidered and not simply dropped out of the budget. They were the golf work for $2.5 million, the road maintenance for $1.5 million, and the Brooks Academy for 1.16. As it turns out, both the 2.5 for the golf and the road maintenance got put back in this budget. So did the selectmen say, well, we want those back in? I wonder why those two
No, and
got in and
Yeah, no, I-
Brooks
and-
Academy
and I
didn't
would-
get put back in.
I would disagree gently with the recollection.
Okay.
As I took it from town meeting, to the two projects we've already talked about, the finance director at the time did not feel comfortable that there were sufficient funds available. That information was articulated to me, that information was articulated to the board, and therefore they were held off. And for me, that's out of an abundance of caution. The board took off the funding for Brooks Academy, and when we got to town meeting, we talked about, I had every expectation that next Monday, November 25th, was going to be the special town meeting for the fall to do several things, not the least of which was to fund the projects that you heard from before. The $700,000 for the roads, the $2.5 million for the golf course, and some number for Brooks Academy. The the select board opted not to call a special town meeting. Therefore, the two other items were restored because I understood that to be questions of sufficiency. The current finance director has confirmed that those projects have sufficient funds available. The question for Brooks Academy remains, what is going to be done for the next project or potentially projects over the next year or 5 years regarding that building?
Well, how does the finance director know that the funds are available for these two projects and not for Brooks Academy?
Because the funds available for the others were receipts, reserves, and other sources. The dollar amount remains in question for Brooks Academy. The dollar amounts were never in question for the other projects. The dollar amount remains in question.
Who questions the dollar amount for Brooks Academy? Who's questioning that?
I don't think they were questioning the dollar amount. They were questioning whether the scope of work, there were disagreements about the scope of work, which ultimately
Sure,
could be the dollar amount.
I'm not going to argue any of those points.
But who is saying that it's not? Who is saying that the amount and the work to be done are at odds?
I understand it to be the select board.
Have they actually done that? Have the select board said, we don't agree that the 1.16 that was discussed and put in the finance committee's recommendation and earlier and so forth?
No,
It's not adequate?
they identified two members from the whole. So of the 5 select board members, they identified 2 members to continue to research and weigh in on this matter, which is ongoing and not complete yet.
But why was it agreed to sufficiently enough to have it pending for the 2025 town meeting fiscal year? And then somewhere in between there, when the whole discussion got into, do we have enough money to cover all these things, and said no, so let's put these 3 things out. Somewhere between that decision and today, somebody said the 1.16 million is an insufficient amount to cover the scope of the work.
So your question's probably better suited for the select board and not me to speak for them.
Yeah, I think we're just going around in circles here, so why don't we move on, and we'll have this discussion with the select board. All right, so Sean, I don't know how you want to go through this, maybe fiscal year
My fiscal year? I think that's
26?
probably
Yeah.
best. Okay. So the first facility under the fiscal year 26 is the 204 Sisson Road. And within that, there are 2 projects. That is the split face block that is falling off the outside of the wall and walkways. And the other project is the doors, the entrance doors.
Any questions?
And that's the,
I mean, we've
those
been
2
over there to
pieces
look at
are
some of those.
combined 265, right?
Yes.
I have a question, and Madam Chair, with your permission, the town administrator's permission, I'd like to ask about some previously approved things for 204 because of some new information. Would that be okay?
So I know you're gonna ask about the roof, right?
And the generator too, but mainly the roof, because of new information I have.
That's not part of that.
So my problem with it, Mark, is that they've already been sort of approved, and I don't think there's anything in this body that we can do to change that approval. If you want to ask where the status of those projects are, that's fine, but rehashing the scope and the work around those projects, I'm not sure is going to get us anywhere, because there's nothing we can do about it, right? We can't change the project, we can't go back and say we can't do it, or we're going to do it. So I'm not sure where you're trying to get to.
Town Administrator, just your opinion, as I said, I have new information about the slate roof last year when we were asked to vote on it. I don't think any of us knew much about slate roofs. So,
I'm sorry, is that fiscal year '25?
Yes.
It's not on your agenda.
okay.
If you
So,
want to ask the status of where he is with the project, that I don't think would be,
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, I couldn't have said it better than you. We have appropriated projects that departments are working on actively. New information is a topic that I'm very familiar with as a parliamentarian to call for reconsideration of the question. And that's not a mechanism that any of us can use.
right.
okay, so then my question would be, just the outstanding project still at 204, I believe, new furnaces in,
Yes.
fire alarm and generator. Just that.
Generator has been designed, and has not gone out for procurement yet. Looking at the length of time to procure generators, we'll probably go with a state bid, get a generator, and then go out to get a contractor to install it. Fire alarm panel, I've got a couple of quotes that I can use for writing up some specs.
And the roof.
And the roof, I have actually received your information, and I'm actively trying to talk to some of those people.
Perfect. That answers my question.
Thank you, Sean. So any questions on this particular project at the 204, though? I think, for all of us who have been there, we've seen the damage on the wall, the entrance doors was not a question in any way that they need to be fixed and replaced. Okay, next.
The next project is a new project this year, was not on the capital plan last year, and that is basically an emergency repair to our demo pad over at the transfer station. Using the equipment on the pad as exposed rebar, they've had to cut it out, and it's become a safety hazard to both people and equipment.
Is that where you drive up onto?
That's actually where the equipment is scraping up all the demo.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the demolition area where people drop off that sort of trash. Got it.
Questions on that project? Next.
Again, by fiscal year and by building, 100 Oak Street, the community center, that has been on the capital plan for about 7 or 8 years. That is the roof. It has been pushed every year. Roof is definitely coming close to its time. It's at 24 years old, so this will put it at 26. And it's also for a generator, which has been installed the same amount of time.
Just a question on the roof. Solar, any opportunity there?
You know, actually, you asked that earlier. We have worked with CVEC in the past. We were looking at a parking lot solar there rather than the roof.
Yeah.
That died. Next time CVEC comes up with another go-round, that was a...
What is CVAC? Is that a funding source?
Cape and Vineyard. What is it? Cape and Vineyard Electric Compact.
So you're
Source of
trying to get
outside
that
funding.
work done through them? Is
Through
that
them.
the idea?
That's how we
Sorry,
did the
Electric
golf course.
Cooperative. Cooperative, I apologize.
That's how we did the solar at the golf course. And that's also how we did the transfer stations.
And is that a funding source, or is it all town money that would be used to create that sort of a facility?
They do the design work, and they hire the contractors, and it basically comes to no cost to the town.
So if you can get them to do that, it's best to let them do that.
Yes.
And they get the electricity from the,
We get the electricity. And to
Wow.
answer your question about the golf course, according to Roman, we have a surplus. He can't use up all the electricity.
and we can't sell it back to the grid?
Back. but he built it up.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So will you look for a project for solar?
I would wait for CVEC because it's no cost to the taxpayers, rather than.
And what do you have to wait, like, how does it work? Sorry.
The last go-round was 3 years ago, I believe.
So does the town reach out to them, or do they
They
reach
re-
out to us?
They reach out to the towns.
Oh, okay, when they have money to spend on the town. Okay, got it. Any other questions on the roof at the community center? Okay.
Next town building is the transfer station and DPW complex. Let me start off with the transfer station. That is to redo the compactors for the recycling area. It includes installing 6 compactors and redesigning the entranceway and the route. That project was estimated at $545,000.
Which was estimated at 545?
The recycling area redesign, 6
Transfer.
compactors and redesign of the area.
So that's
Transfer.
within the 9,722 million, right?
Yes.
Joe, I would just note that the number that they have on the worksheet does not tie with the top schedule. So they have 9722 and we have 9177.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. About a $650,000 difference.
And the remaining of that complex is for our new mechanic shop. We've talked about it last year in depth.
And remind me, is it replacing?
It is a brand-new
Building.
because of our expansions that we've done with the mechanics. It's a 6-bay garage.
So remind me where the work's being done today? You have a
An
building.
existing building.
If I may, Madam Chair, we talked about a little earlier vehicle maintenance.
Yeah.
The town has consolidated numerous functions over the last decade under the DPW umbrella, yet we have no more space. When I first started, we had 2 mechanics. We have 4 mechanics now. Actually, we didn't have a facilities department. We had a building maintenance department, was just fixing, it consisted of 2 guys. We have 4 guys now. Both of those departments severely lack space. We're parking tons of vehicles outside just so these guys can do their jobs. The town spent, let me back up. DPW facility, memory serves me correctly, was constructed in 1988. And we've built essentially nothing since. Sean has skinned that building to keep it alive and well. We've done the same with the transfer station, so he's doing his best to keep up the infrastructure. This is just about, honestly, space and space to work.
So you're tearing down what you have?
No, ma'am, no, this would be in addition to, out in parking lot area, adjacent to the current building.
And what happens with the existing building?
We continue to use it as we do to this
And you
day.
just maintain it? Okay, fine.
Just a suggestion or a thought, breaking off the recycling center from the reconstruction, and I'll tell you why, in my observation from the dump. The cardboard is compacted by a front-end loader, pushes it down. I don't think it receives the amount of compaction that a regular compactor would use. I don't think, to my knowledge, the plastic is compacted. And thirdly, I think, because I was in construction, when I see those front-end loaders pushing down on that cardboard, I've seen hydraulic lines break. And, I'm just afraid of people throwing cardboard in there while that front-end loader is going down. Not only will they get sprayed with hydraulic oil, but that bucket could fall. So I would ask you to consider doing that, because I think you're sending all these loads off Cape, not fully compacted. You could reduce your expenses and your productivity. You have a guy that has to run a front-end loader over there quite a bit and separate things. I just think for productivity reasons and, just saving money with all your transport costs, that recycling center may be a good thing to look at doing ahead of, not to say that your new building is important, but breaking that apart and trying to get the electricity down there to do that, because I think it'd be very good for the town.
I bring that back to the administrator, because it's been my understanding that your policy is all the buildings go into one sheet for that year.
Yeah, so I think what they're also getting to is if you're looking at your form here for the DPW complex, you have under project description, first, a construction, so we say build, we call it construction, of a pre-design, so there's no design element, correct, so far? Construct a pre-engineered or designed building is at the main section of the DPW complex. What's the cost on that?
It sounded like it was
It's
the
the-
9177, because that difference is exactly the
Yes,
545.
exactly, yeah.
It was quoted for the recycling redesign.
So $9,177,000
Correct,
in fiscal year '27.
correct.
And then to the further point, but I want to make sure I'm clear, so I'm going to change the words in this, to comport with procurement. The next part, you say redesign, we're going to call that design. So we know for procurement purposes, it's design work. Is there some element of construction that would follow that design?
Oh, yes.
So is the delta, Scott?
Yeah, the 545, but
Yeah, is that merely design, or is that design and
No,
construction?
Design and construction and
All right.
procurement of compact.
So that's how we'll actually spread it out. The
Oh, I see what- I see what
9177 is correct. Yep.
Yeah, I see what I did here. They were in 2 different years, so
Correct.
it
Right.
is 9177 plus the 545, so that
oh,
that
that is
is
a
correct.
separate line there,
Yeah, I missed that. I
Correct, it
thought
would
they-
be. Yep,
I
we
think
all- I think we
because
all
they,
missed it.
I
Absolutely
didn't
right.
read the
Yep.
years at the top, they're combined. Okay,
Right.
sorry.
Sorry, I just have a question about the barns, the existing one and the proposed new one. Is this for where mechanics actually work on all the town's vehicles?
Yes,
But is it also where vehicles are stored to keep them out of the weather?
it would not be. It's just a mechanics bay, a facilities maintenance for carpentry and plumbing repairs, and a welding bay.
It just seems like an outlandish amount of money
Well,
compared
welcome to
to,
municipal government.
well, no, compared to I don't know how many square feet this is. It doesn't say here, but compared to like the golf building, which is also a metal prefab sort of structure.
Absolutely, but it has a lot more to it, because this
Yeah.
includes all the hydraulics, the lifts, and the electrical for it. It is only an 8,000 square foot building.
So Sean and I were shocked, we met, what's it there, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, we met with an engineering firm that designed, I believe it was the town of Orleans's?
Yarmouth.
Town of Yarmouth's new DPW facility, to the tune of, I think that was 18 million, something. And the building itself, Sean and I were thinking this was gonna be 3, maybe 3.5 million. That is the case, but there was all this ancillary requirements in the public sector that I won't say we were oblivious to, but we didn't really consider, along with installing it so it's useful for these departments. It was mind open. We were shocked as well, I want to say.
So Scott, that's why I said to the water department, when they said they want to build a building to store their vehicles in because they're rusting out and whatever, you better go check with the DPW
Yeah.
about what the cost of a metal barn is, basically.
It's-
They put 1.5 million. I thought that number might be a little light, but
Yeah, so for
You might
just
talk to them
storage,
about that.
storage like the golf course.
it probably is.
It's not gonna be as much,
Yeah.
but,
This has more mechanical
correct.
operations.
And the building, physically, where is it going? To the back or to the side or?
In the back of the DPW, there's a giant parking lot
Yeah.
with other space. The whole DPW site, along with the disposal area and 33 acres of capped landfill is, I think, 165 acres or something. It's a very large facility.
Yeah.
But we want to keep it as tight to the building. That minimizes cost. Utility costs, a lot of other costs. So we, as well as, these guys are still going to work out of the same place.
Yeah.
So it'd be as close to the other building as
So
we
it's
can.
not physically attached, won't be attached to
Right.
the current one, it'll be separate,
But the same facility.
but and about the same size as the present
No,
building?
nowhere near the same size.
No
This
way.
is very modest.
How big is the existing barn?
Been a while since I measured it. I wanna say,
180?
no, 32,000,
Uh-huh.
I think.
And there's no economies of attaching to the existing barn, expanded space?
No, actually, we need to get with the times too, such as Plime Event. Our vehicle exhaust right now when they're working on a vehicle, is being exhausted into the barn or into the garage, which also gets sucked into the office spaces. And as you would hear from the fire department, that would never happen there. All their systems. are built on the cloud.
$1,100 a square foot.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just one more.
I'm with you on the shock, but that's what it is.
Just one more comment. If you did do the recycling center, I think taxpayers could see right out in front the money being put to use, and probably helping them to get out of there a lot quicker and a lot cleaner operation, be like Dennis, perhaps, Yarmouth.
Absolutely agree with you, that's why we put it in.
So I'd just like to put on the record that Mark's looking for us to spend money. Is that a first?
Actually not, because
Mark the time.
the economies of fully compacted cardboard and plastic may not over time require as many trips with a $500,000 Mack tractor.
All
There we
right,
go.
so now we're gonna move on. Any other questions on the barn?
And thank you so much, Sean, for
What's that? I know, I'm trying. Let's keep going.
Okay, same fiscal year, library has $40,000 onto it. That is for a design engineer, interior design. I don't know if you want to speak to it, Ginny, since you're here.
Come on up.
I'd be happy to relinquish my seat.
Momentarily.
Oh,
Oh, that's all right, I'll sign it.
shucks.
But I actually have, I have a handout if you're ready. But I guess maybe mixed signals on whether we were supposed to come or not. I got an invite this week, so I didn't have a chance to email this to you. But it's a fairly simple project anyway.
Ginny, just introduce yourself when you
Sure.
get up there, please.
Good morning, or maybe it's afternoon now. I'm Ginny Hewitt, I'm the library director. This project is for interior modifications of the library, $40,000 in fiscal '27 for a space needs and utilization study and the development of plans, and $150,000 in fiscal '28 for construction work. And you'll see that's mixed in with some other work Sean has for the building in fiscal '28. But $150,000 of that fiscal '28 is for this project. So the purpose of this project is to reconfigure the interior floor space to accommodate changes since the last major renovation was completed in 1998. We're not seeking a major renovation, just more modest changes to the floor plan within the existing building footprint. So the reason why this project is a little different than other facilities projects at this point, because it's not being driven by a building system need or a major repair to the building. It's driven by the operational need of the library. And so, the beginning of it would be we hire the consultant, we do the study and develop the plans, and that's the library managed phase of the project with, of course, Sean would be included in that. But then once we know what we want, and have a final design, then that is when it becomes a traditional facilities project managed by the facilities manager. I can tell you some of the things that we're looking at that are needs on the public side. We're looking to improve what we would call the discoverability of materials, meaning like where things are located, how patrons can find things. And you can't do that if, say, a certain subject that people might be interested in are located in different areas, so they're not discoverable in that way. We're looking to separate quiet spaces, which people still want, but most of the library is very interactive activity. Our young adult collections are split on two sides of the main floor. We need better furnishings. One of the major needs we have is for small study rooms, and this would not take the place of groups or organizations renting rooms at the community center for their monthly meeting. This is more informal gatherings it's for tutoring, it's for small groups that get together, maybe college students, people taking remote classes. We also have about to start something where there are remote court appearances, where people it's for family court, where transportation might be an issue and the court can set that up. Another thing is you're now able to take your driver's test online, your written test. And people often don't have good internet at home. So anyway, that's a major need. Most libraries have several of those rooms, and we do not have that. And so in the staff areas, we're really looking to look at the location and the design of our public service desks. Our circulation desks take up a lot of real estate there that we may not need with self-check. And I mean, we're not doing away with it, but we have self-check options. And they're also not ergonomically correct for the kind of work being done. But we also want to look at maybe consolidating some of our service desks. Right now, on the first floor, we have a circulation desk, and then we have a youth services desk that's we have a long, thin building, so they're further down there. If the circulation desk was more in the middle of the first floor, then there's a possibility we may not need to staff the children's desk until closing every night at 7. That are more centrally located, keep an eye on security. So those are decisions we'll have to make when we look at the options and see if safety really allows for that. We also have a lot of problems with, I would say, building infrastructure, meaning there's not electrical outlets where we need them. This 2/3 of that building is historic, but even in the newer part, can I say, they must have cut corners, because I'm thinking the Cahoon room, Sean. We've got major electrical issues where, with people working in there and we're daisy chaining power strips, which isn't good. And also the same with our networking. It's possible that this may be included in an IT project, and we won't need to fund that ourselves. So anyway, lots of things like this. Very much inadequate workspace, and what we have is poorly designed, and also huge lack of storage. The building just didn't, when the renovation happened, they didn't provide for any of that, and there's stuff everywhere, basically. So what was I going to say? So if this isn't funded, we would continue. I think it would impact our ability to provide services that patrons want, and our operational problems will still continue with workspace and storage. We may be able to do some things incrementally, but we're not going to get the comprehensive overall look at what do we need. There is no other source of funding for this. It's not a major renovation, so we wouldn't qualify for, it's called Library Services and Technology Act construction funding from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. It's too small for that, and we don't want it to grow either. We may not get all of our wants met. We're going to have to prioritize once we get, the information from the consultant. And it also wouldn't qualify for Community Preservation Act funds for historic preservation, because it's that they don't do that for the interiors. So I think that's.
Just, it's not on the summary yet, is it, this project?
Yeah, it's within the 660, the 40,000 is for the study, and then 150 of the 664, if I'm reading this right, is for.
No, I don't think so, because the dehumidification project is 40 plus 664. So the project we're talking about
Am I
now
missing
doesn't
that?
appear
Yeah,
on.
I don't believe the 150 was on there. I didn't have that number when I typed up this form.
Oh, so it's not, okay.
So
Yeah,
if I could, Madam Chair, that's the purpose
Sorry.
for these discussions.
Yep.
So having said that, we show presently for fiscal year '27, $40,000. Sean, how do you describe that $40,000?
Design.
Interior design
Design for.
as the director has just talked about it,
Yes.
correct? So that we're simpatico on. So far,
Yes,
so good?
yeah, yeah.
Yep, thank you. And then, Sean, you have $664,000 for the design and installation of a dehumidification upgrade in FY '28. And then additionally, the director, library director has just mentioned it would be $150,000 added to that overall figure, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
It's just the 150 that's missing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Sorry.
to add that
So
to
that,
28.
that new number, Madam Chair, through you, can I pick on Scott again for math?
814.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Can I ask a question?
Glad to get you on board.
I never doubted.
Okay, can I ask Sean, can I ask a question? The dehumidification, this is all the HVAC work? Okay, I didn't know if there was a separate HVAC, but dehumidification, that's what we want. Yeah.
Rolls off the
Thank you.
tongue. Thank you.
Do you want,
I'll move right on to the dehumidification. This has been on the capital plan for 2 years now. Ginny has had some complaints of the books are feeling damp and the paperwork is curling. So looking at the humidity range is around 70% in the summertime. Working with Rise Engineering, they said we could put in a reheat and subcool chiller to pull out the humidification, and that's the estimate that they had given me.
questions on dehumidifying system? We're good. Okay, let's keep going. Making progress.
FY '28, moving on to 135 for the fire station windows replacement. That's been on the capital plan for a couple of years as well. All their windows are starting to rot out to the
Which
point
building
where.
is that in?
Station 1.
Station 1, okay.
I've actually had to replace about 5 or 6 already. There's a number more that are starting to go, but
Questions on replacing windows in the,
What kind of material do you use? Is it wood now?
it's wood now. We're replacing it with ASIC type plastic materials.
Okay.
okay.
And we talked about that and that. So moving on to 29.
Madam Chair, if I could, before we go too far afield, I've also noticed that on the plan, before we go too far, 209 Queen Anne Road, DPW complex, 100,000 in fiscal year '26, 9,722,000 fiscal year '27.
In 28. That's added together.
Those were added together, 9177.
Sorry, well, here's what I'm getting to. I added 545 to the line that says DPW complex, but if you look right below that, we have the 545.
Yeah.
In 28.
Right.
In 27, it was 9177.
For the building alone.
So we're back to 9177, fiscal year '27.
Yes.
The line that says 209.
Yes.
Fiscal year '28, we're at what for 209?
545.
Why wouldn't we have it as we do under 273? So look at the next line below that.
So the numbers are flipped, is that what you're trying to say?
I think the number's already there.
The buildings are flipped.
Correct. Sorry. What we're getting to is the
Yes.
numbers are we're always there. We have an application for 209/273 Queen Anne Road, which is the 165 acres. So I believe the original numbers in your plan were correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 91's, because I need to make sure I'm clear.
Of that address.
That's right.
91's return payable, right. 9,177,000 for fiscal year '27 for the 209 line, and 545 for the 273 line in fiscal year '28.
Correct.
Thank you. And then we have corrected or updated
We're gonna add
Brooks
them.
Street Library to show a total in fiscal year '28 of 814,000.
Right,
Thanks, everybody, appreciate the help.
29?
Okay. Now we can go to,
In 29, I have put the Albro House on there for an architectural assessment of the foundation.
so this is just the assessment,
That's
it's not the
design.
work. So you,
Assessment and estimate.
you think you can do both for 100,000?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. Questions on the Arbor House?
Is it?
Okay, let's go to Town Hall. We're gonna
Town Hall.
do some repairs in Town Hall.
Sean, I got it here if you want it.
Yeah. That's because it includes more. That's one I had.
Good.
Town hall.
Okay, town hall includes the roofing, the repair of the EDPM roofing in 28 for $275. That's the rubber roofing part of the town hall. We got rubber and slate up there. The rubber roofing has deteriorated to the point where it's starting to make tears, which has gotten the insulation wet, so all that'll have to be ripped out and replaced.
Any questions on the roof? Yep.
May I just ask for clarification?
Yes.
Did you say 28?
Yeah, is it
29.
29?
It's 29.
28 and 29, it's split. Again, the form is 3 years, so under one building, town hall.
20.
So Sean, what we're saying is in our schedule, it's all under, the 100,000 is all on, the 625,000 is all under fiscal year 29. Is that correct? Or did you have it planned out over
I
multiple
had it planned out
years?
in my form. I might not put it on this form correctly.
So we can correct that now. For fiscal year 28,
You'll need what?
what dollar amount would you put on the 732 Main Street line?
275,
And that is for
the rubber roof.
the rubber roof, okay.
Madam Chair, if I could be consistent?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And then the balance, 350,000 would be
For the
fiscal year
HVAC.
29.
And that would be for HVAC replacement.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Scott.
Quick question, the
Yes.
rubber roof, will it be a white roof? Just because the black roofs, from
That's what we
I've read-
have up there is black, and that's why it's probably deteriorated.
Yeah, so would it be a white roof?
I,
They're supposedly more energy efficient, they reflect
Yeah.
the sunlight. What about, instead of putting a big heavy-duty chiller above, is this building appropriate for heat pumps? We get it-
that is what the plan is for the future.
Okay, good.
That HVAC upgrade would, those rooftop units are now 15 years old. ASHRAE standards is 15 years for it. We're gonna take it out to 20 and replace it with heat pumps.
Roof mounted or on the?
Roof, because of the HVAC system, we change, it's all a VAV, variable airflow, so we don't wanna change up everything within all the ductwork.
Okay. Any more questions?
30.
We're good. Okay, we've got two more.
Okay.
Then I do have a question, but go ahead.
Public safety, public work, police department, their AC systems are also sitting there at the 20-year mark, believe it or not.
Oh,
I
wait a
had
minute,
hard
you're doing
time.
the 350 first, so, or 360?
360, yes.
Okay, there was 80,000 though for the
Okay.
White House.
All right, I wasn't going off of your sheet, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
All right,
And
eight,
if I could,
yes.
it reads as 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
I know, why,
So
well, I
it's-
didn't know
it's-
we had a White House.
It's really 75 Oak Street athletic complexes, specifically around White House Field.
Oh, okay.
Because I had to look at that and go, wait a second.
So they're operating off of still a fuse power system, and their transformer is very antiquated. When I say fuses, they're fuses for their three-phase are about this big around and that long, and nobody likes pulling them out when we've had power fluctuations that pop them, so.
Okay.
At all.
Imagine why.
Any questions on that? Okay. Now we go to the 360.
Now we go to the 360. The police department is now in age. It's still an R22 system. It's even difficult to find R22 at all these days, so it's time to upgrade.
Okay. Questions on the police station? I just have two questions. One, last year there was something on, and I didn't get to look it up, $85,000 for a golf project that came on.
Took it off.
What was it?
It was for heat pumps, and we've been doing it internally with golf funds and our My Budget funds.
Okay. And then you also have a line at the bottom for the harbor complex, but you don't have any money on that. That very last line.
I have no idea what that is.
Okay. So maybe we could just take that off, Joe, so it
Sorry, can you
doesn't.
tell me the reference again?
It's the very last line of facilities maintenance. It says 715 Route 28 Harbor Complex, but there's no money associated with it.
So that's part of our transparency effort. We list major buildings that over time have had capital plans,
Okay.
and that's to indicate
Just-
that presently.
It doesn't need it.
Right.
Okay.
And so very quickly, what you can see then is, we're not doing anything on the Harbor Master property We're working on the jetties,
Okay.
but I would recommend we keep that.
Okay, so.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What about the school? Is that covered under Monomoy and their facilities maintenance? And also the $6 million potential re-siding, that comes in under the Monomoy?
Correct, because the,
Be in this capital plan here?
correct, the middle school project, the only question for the town of Harwich is whether we agree to pay the additional assessment for the debt service. But that is solely the decision of the school district on the project.
And what about the elementary school?
Elementary school is us. You can certainly talk to them. The only reason I didn't have them yet is there are no changes presently to their capital plan for the out years yet. So typically for them, what we hear is we hear from them through the joint meetings between Chatham and Harwich. They're focused on the middle school. So we're not anticipating any of those costs to change in the current plan.
Thank
So
you.
we didn't review the elementary school, but because there's been no change, it did,
Right, so my understanding is these are carryovers that they've affirmed, and they do not have any plans for fiscal year 30.
okay.
So their plan truly has not changed
So,
for Harwich Elementary.
so thank you for
Could I
the.
just, I'm sorry, one other thing. The parking, I'm sorry, the parking lot. Thank you for improving the lighting somewhat. Is there any plan, it doesn't probably reach the level of a capital outlay, but I remember last year, when you did the renovations out here, a lady fell down. I had to pick her up. She did go to the hospital, had rehab. I still think it's still dark out there. So it probably doesn't reach the level of a capital outlay, 50,000, but I would still encourage you to look at, especially around the building perimeter, the lighting, because we have had somebody get hurt, and there was some expenses involved with it, so.
I'll let you
You want it, or
No,
you?
you got it. You
You're
got
too
it.
good to me.
Not a facility, right?
We were actually talking, through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
We were actually talking about this on our way here today, ironically.
I listened to your phone, I have that ability.
I ran into a little bit of a roadblock because of the historical committee. So I had our electrical contractor, Arden, who does our street lights, put together a little bit of a plan, very reasonable, could be, I don't remember what the number was, but it was under 50,000. And we go to present it to the historical committee, and they started not liking the fixtures that we were recommending and came out with some very expensive fixtures. And at that, I discussed that with the assistant administrator and simply walked away at that point in frustration. To do right, you might be talking 50, because they talked about having to put new conduit in, got to put additional lights back in the parking lot, where there isn't any lights further out. And you've got this tension between what they want for historic and lighting the place up, as well as consideration for the two abutters.
Right.
You have residents right here as
If I
well.
could add on, Madam Chair, I have no hesitation, assuming that a project like that would absolutely fit on capital, as it would exceed the 50,000 for sure. And then last but not least, in their defense, they are the Historic District / Historical Commission.
Just for clarification, is this the dark sky compliant lights? Is that what this is, that whether you cast down?
No,
No, it's not.
no, ma'am. My feedback, and after watching that one meeting, was aesthetics, and aesthetics only.
Okay, it wasn't
We were looking for functionality. We wanted to lighten the place up without negatively affecting the abutters. I thought our contract made a reasonable presentation on that to us, and, yeah, they
Building is,
What about just wall packs? Because it's, when you get farther back, it's not always being used, but close into the building does seem to have some dark areas, just some wall packs on the building that, just a thought, if they had any of those involved, if you could just consider perhaps.
Still has to go in front of historic,
Okay.
and we do have wall-mounted lights currently,
Just make
along
them
with the
brighter.
bollard lights. I don't think I can make them any brighter.
Thank you both for coming, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can we give you an ovation?
Good job, Sean. Keep it up.
For 3 hours. 2
Um,
hours.
I got it shorter, I'm trying. I
you
just
did.
want to say next week, we have no meeting next week. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, the 3rd, in this room at 10 o'clock. I want to confirm with Joe, we're going to talk about finance and debt,
And
funding hopefully.
funding is December 3rd.
And then we are going to take votes. I also am going to add to the schedule, I know Mark asked a question. Maybe we could do all of our questions, you could have them to me before, what's the Sunday after Thanksgiving by 5 o'clock. If you have any questions, then we can give them to Joe, and then we can follow up in the meeting, and everybody would be, would hear what the questions
So
were.
you say we're discussing funding of the capital plan on the 3rd?
Yes.
Is what we're voting on it?
Yes, we're doing votes on the 3rd.
We vote on the
And when you
3rd.
say funding, are you referring to all 5 years or just 26?
No, just, we only
26.
funded the 26, fiscal year 26.
Okay.
And he's gonna bring back, somebody from, finance to talk about debt, because we never had that conversation. So, I just need to confirm that with him.
I make just comment that I think the discussion by the person who represents finance has to be real. We had a discussion which sort of was up here in the clouds about if this should happen, if this should happen, and we never got numbers per se. It wasn't concrete. If we have to make voting decisions,
Oh, for 26.
it has to be a lot closer to what's real. And I just make that comment. I wasn't impressed. I mean, he had a lot of information, but I think what we need to make valid votes and decisions, we need concrete.
And as I recall, he left with Joe after 1 hour when we were just in the heat of that discussion.
Yeah,
Right,
and we
right.
were,
We just didn't have
sorta
any
hanging
discussion
here.
yet.
Questions would be important.
we were just hanging kind of thing without an ability to make decisions.
Yeah, if there's certain questions you have on the debt
And-
portion,
And
And this
Mark,
year-
Mark can't work that way.
No, Mark.
You-
And this
What's
year
that?
we have our free cash number, is that correct?
I
Hopefully.
believe we have it, yeah, I think Joe
Close.
has it.
Close enough. We weren't even close.
We weren't even close last year.
I'll wrap this up and answer for the past 15 years that this happens, decisions are made up to town meeting. Changes happen up to town meeting. So we can present as much as we want in December and go on hiatus till town meeting. But changes could be made. We can meet and still review things because there may be changes, which would affect how 26 would look like. So I just offer that up.
Yeah, most of the changes would come in 26.
That's what I'm saying, and then,
Yeah. Joe, so what we're saying about our next meeting on December 3rd is that we're gonna bring back somebody to talk about the debt?
Yeah, so I had a conversation, sorry, Madam Chair, through you. I had a conversation the other day with Ed Spellman. You know Ed, you've seen Ed. Ed was most recently the interim treasurer collector. He is now magically the finance director, town accountant interim. So I told him that you folks were meeting on December 3rd, and he and I were going to come back and talk about debt generally and specifically. And I also understood that to be perhaps the final meeting before we present jointly on December 9th. Is that correct?
Right, so
Yep.
we were planning on, hopefully we'll have funding sources?
So, yes, the funding sources are the ones that I've talked about. Free cash still has not been certified, so I've been operating on an estimate. I couldn't even tell you the number because we have a series of documents that we submit, and the state tells us the number. The number that we've been working on is still the working number of 5 million.
Okay.
If that holds true, the plan for fiscal year '26 can be fully funded.
Line by line, can we have, we're going to be voting
Yes.
line by line.
It looks
So you're gonna-
close, actually.
Excuse me?
It looks really close, but.
That's not the issue that I'm bringing up. I'd like to know line by line.
Yes.
What pot is it coming out of?
Yes.
That's more important than the amount.
And if I may, free cash, other available funds and uses, borrowing,
Yes.
so the debt exclusion. And when I say funds available, again, if that dollar amount holds from the Commonwealth, funds could be available for other potential projects. Not one of a $35 million nature, but perhaps one of a $1.5 million nature.
Do you include that $6 million stabilization fund balance as available for capital funding?
No, we never rely upon those because we consider those to be rainy day or extraordinary. All of them, meaning the general and the two special purposes.
Joe, so you're saying there's 5 million in free cash, there's 8.5 million in this budget.
Yep, not all free cash is
Not all
need-
free
is
cash,
needed for the
But
capital.
you're saying there's enough to do 8.5 every one of these projects.
Yes, yep, presently
Somehow,
speaking.
some way, by line.
Yeah.
But he will show us the magic.
Right,
on-
to the former chair, or the chair emeritus's comment, I have it several different ways. The other thing I want you to be aware of on December 3rd is the output of all of this will be at least 3, possibly 4 distinct articles. So, yes, we can go line by line, but then you're gonna see it in the warrant as, these projects are being funded by free cash. These projects are being funded by other sources and uses, and this project is a debt exclusion, and this project is a debt exclusion. And the reason why we separate those two is they have to be their own question.
So-
And how much additional is there available above this 8.5 as a guess or an estimate?
I'm not gonna disclose that because the board's not aware of it yet.
Because this is a new committee, just remember that we are voting 26, and we're voting line by line on the expenditure, and does it make sense to do it? That's why it's so important we understand line by line and why we're doing it. It's not the value of the 8 million, it's the 200,000, I don't know, for the water department, realistic? Should we go with that, or should we have them come back in and address the issue? That's all I'm saying.
So you want to be prepared to make votes.
Right.
If you have any questions, you want to send those to me by Sunday after Thanksgiving by 5 PM, and I will get them to Joe in advance. I know we have one question from Mark.
Questions
We'll do
about
follow-up
these line
questions.
items here?
Anything we went over. And I would even say if there's specific questions about debt that you want to hear, let's put them together so that you know what at least most of what we want to hear.
We're voting on 26
Only 27. And what is
Yeah.
what time is our meeting on the 9th?
It's 10, at 10,
No,
right?
the 3rd is 10,
what's
the
the
9th
time
is
of
what
the-
time?
Oh, is it, sorry, Joe?
No, please finish that question, but I heard a comment that I need to correct and
Okay.
amplify. So what time?
On the 9th.
I was talking about the 3rd is at 10 AM.
3rd is
Oh,
10,
sorry.
on
We
the
al- we
9th.
always say 6 PM on the 9th,
Got it.
and we always try to have it be at the top of the hour.
6
Got it.
PM.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Put it all in.
Yes.
to be clear, what I believe you're gonna end up doing on December 3rd is approving the projects that need to be funded in fiscal year 26, as was said. But you'll also then vote to have the the capital outlay plan fiscal year 2026 through 2030 as presented.
The plan as a whole.
Correct. Yep.
So if you have any objections to any of it, come prepared, and we'll vote. How's that?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you, Caleb.
You do all that figuring in your head,